You know, one of the Gospels, every time we hear certain readings, I think we get so immune to them that we're like, yeah, I'll love my enemies. And you really don't understand how you would act if you have or have not put that into place. So this weekend we had some great readings, and I think it really touched home for a lot of people. We start out with the book of Samuel, where Saul was chasing after David. And there were two separate times in the book of Samuel where David came across Saul and he had an opportunity to kill him. The first time in a cave, he cut a piece of cloak off of Saul. And then he actually even felt guilty because here's this guy, Saul, that's chasing him down, trying to kill him. He could have killed Saul when he was in the cave, but instead he just cut a piece of cloak. And then he still felt guilty about that because Saul was the anointed one of God, one of the anointed ones, right? The first king. Later on in the book of Samuel, because Saul continued to pursue David, he wanted him dead. And again, when he was asleep, David went into the cave with his servant Abishai, and Abishai's like, "This is it. God's delivered him into your hands. Take his life." He goes, "Let me do it." He goes, "I can thrust him through." And he goes, "I won't even need a second thrust, man. I can do this for you now." And what did David say? David said, "You cannot take the life of the Lord's anointed." So here he is. This guy is trying to kill him, and who in a second would have cut his head off, said, "No, you can't do that." But instead, he took his spear, took Saul's spear, and he took a jug of water that was at Saul's head. And all the guys that were surrounding Saul were all asleep. And it says in the Bible that God kept a deep sleep over them. So then David and Abishai walked away and they shouted, "Hey, we're over here." And he's like, "I could have killed you. Here's your spear and your water jug. And shame on the rest of you guys. You didn't protect your king because I got through." So basically, that second time Saul said he was sorry. And you can go through the book later. He kills himself in the battle. And then in the gospel, we hear about loving your neighbor. We hear about giving your cloak to one who asks for, or if one who takes it. Let me just read the exact words. We've all read it before. It says, Jesus says, "To you who hear I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you." So if you think about what Saul did, or what David did to Saul, he did good to someone who hated him. He loathed him, and everybody in the community knew that. But right here, right now, in this year, many of us have people who hate us. And the one I think about all the time, because I'm always like, "Priest, say this in your homily." Oftentimes, the people that hate us are our spouses. I've talked to too many people said, "I hate my spouse," or, "Yeah, I've wanted them dead." So this is no game, guys. Our spouses whom we once vowed to love can at one point become our enemies, and we can hate them and they can hate us. So it says, "Do good to those who hate you." How hard is it to do something good for the spouse who's got another girlfriend or boyfriend? They're sleeping around. They're sleeping with prostitutes. They're treating you poorly. And then you respond to them with love. It befuddles them. They have no idea what to do with that. The gospel goes on to say, "Bless those who curse you and pray for those who mistreat you." I mean, the easy thing that comes to mind, of course, is you're on the road and someone whips you the bird and they've got road rage, and you can tell by what they're saying with their mouth that they're cursing you. Well, that often makes us want to curse them back. But what if you instead prayed and said, "Lord, bless that man, bless that woman"? These are small ways, sometimes big ways, to practice this here gospel. These are your enemies. In that moment, that person was your enemy. It says, "Pray for those who mistreat you." It also says to the person who strikes you on one cheek, offer the other as well. We can analyze these ad nauseum, but it really doesn't mean like, "Hit me here. Okay, hit me here too." It's not that attitude. It's "I give you all of me. If you feel this need to hit, then you hit again, but I'm only going to love in return." And that's the part that wins. That's the part where you're going, "That's true love. I'm watching the person truly love me, not this fake, okay, here's my other cheek." And they don't understand it because hatred and anger come from Satan, but true love and this willingness to say, "I'll give you even more of me than you took originally." That's what wins souls. It taking from one who takes your cloak. Do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do unto you. For if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you're good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do the same. So I can keep on. Well, actually, let me read this other one. If you lend money to those from whom you expect payment, what credit is that to you? I used to work in finances for years. I was a member services officer, gave people loans, closed them out, and anyway. And I would see a lot of people had money borrow from them and the person didn't pay them back, or they charged them interest, or they were angry. And one of the things Jesus is referring to here is you've got a family member who says, can I borrow 2,000? I promise you I'll pay you back. And they've borrowed money from you before and they've never paid you back. Giving them this money without expecting repayment. It's not like you're saying to them, don't pay me back. But if they say, yes, I'll pay you back. Okay, hopefully they'll pay you back, but not expecting them to. Not because they should get off. Too many people say, that's not fair. Well, on the earth, but in heaven, God will repay you. He will see that. He will judge them. But he will see that you're going, you know what, Lord, I just want to give to one who asks. I'm going to give even if I don't get it back. Because really, if he borrowed $1,000 from you, who gave you the $1,000 in the first place? It was God, right? Okay. So he keeps talking about what credit, even sinners do this stuff. Love your enemies, do good to them, and lend expecting nothing back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High. For he himself is kind to the ungrateful and to the wicked. So he's saying to us, be merciful just as your God is merciful. All right. So I want to shout out to the priest whose homily I heard this weekend. And so I'm copying something he said, but I had to immediately do a video about it. I was visiting. So whatever the name of the church was in Columbus, Ohio, good for you, Father. But he mentioned my favorite saint, Maria Goretti. Now, if any of you know anything about Maria Goretti, she was an 11-year-old girl, I believe she was 11, when her family brought on an indigent man to help around the farm, the house, whatever. And this young man didn't have a great relationship with his own father, but his name was Serenelli, was his last name. I'm all of a sudden forgetting his first name, Anthony Serenelli. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I forgot his first name because I have the story memorized. It's funny that I remember the last name. Anyway, back to the point. He had lust for this beautiful Maria Goretti, who was a very, very holy girl and chaste. And at one point, he tried to rape her. She fought him off. And the whole time she fought him off, she was saying, please don't do this. You won't get to heaven. I want you to get to heaven. This is going to hurt you. So she could be thinking about the bad things he's doing to her, but she is selflessly thinking about his soul. You won't get to heaven. You'll be punished. Please don't do this. And she was able to die with her virginity intact, but because he was so angry, he stabbed her 14 times, brutally. And as she was in the hospital dying of her wounds, she just kept praying for him. And she said she forgave him and she wanted him to come to heaven. So this is crazy. He eventually, gets arrested, goes to jail, and is very, very angry for quite some time. But he eventually had a dream, and I'm shortening the story, and there might have been several dreams because I can't remember that part of the story. I'm going just off of memory. But in one of the dreams he had of her, she appeared to him with 14, I think, roses. It was either roses or lilies, whatever. But and each one represented one of the stab wounds that he gave her. And with each one she handed to him, it was a forgiveness for each one of those stab wounds. He was absolutely converted in jail, went on to live a very good life as an ideal prisoner, got out, and he one day appeared at the door of Maria Goretti's mother. And she, thinking to herself, I could slam the door in his face. But instead she said, if my daughter could forgive you, I can forgive you. And eventually, when Maria Goretti went on to be canonized as a saint, it was Maria's mother, and sitting next to her was, I cannot believe I forgot his first name, Antonio Serenelli, but Mr. Serenelli was there at her side as Maria Goretti was being canonized. What a story. Loving your neighbor. I mean, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree because the holiness began with this little girl who, come on, how many of us have been brutalized? How many of you out there sadly have been raped? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I am not trying to say anything, but the idea of you're in self-preservation mode. Can you imagine? Well, some of you who've been through this horrific situation can imagine. I can't because I wasn't through this. What it took for her to forgive her killer as he was killing her, as he was attempting to rape her. For those of you that have been through these situations, you've been through rape, you've been through someone attempting your life, you've been through someone that abandoned you, a parent that abandoned you and kept your siblings, gave you up for adoption, or put you on the streets, or got rid of you and kept drugs instead. These, in the eyes of the world, are often seen as our enemies. And no one is saying you should hang out with your rapist. That is ludicrous. But the idea of forgiving that rapist, the idea of forgiving that person who killed your child, the idea of saying, I want you in heaven with me. I mean, you're here bleeding out. I want you in heaven with me. With me. I could see people saying, I want you to get to heaven because that pleases God. But actually saying, with me. That's the part that's the whole thing gets me. But that, I know so many of us, we want to just hate that person. You're hurting me. That spouse that's leaving you. They're having an affair. They're taking your children around the other woman or the other man. They're not even giving you child support. You're living on nothing. You're bankrupt. You're living in a one-bedroom place. And I've seen this a lot because the spouse who should be giving you money took your money and took your children sometimes. And you're saying, I just want you in heaven with me. I love you too much. I love you, the person who took my money, the roommate in college who stole from me, who went into my dresser drawer and took whatever. You took my computer. There are so many people that offend us, hurt us, molest us, beat us, drug us. We live in a wicked world. But what we've learned from King David, and I guess that's why God anointed him, he had something special in him. And what we learn from Maria Goretti, those are nearly perfect examples of the gospel of loving your enemy. Guys, it takes supernatural strength to do that. But supernatural strength isn't just for the other guy. You can have it as well if you simply ask. The gospel tells us that too. Who in your life has offended you the most? Who in your life caused you to, at one point, hate them? Who in your life would you care less if they died? Who in your life, if you found out they went to hell, you'd go, whatever. Those are the people the Lord wants us to love the most. Because what good is it if we love those who love us, right? Everybody does that. And as he says, even sinners do that. But you know Jesus. You have the grace. You can love the unlovable in ways that culture and society would look at you and think, how could she have done that? How could he have loved that person who did that to him, who killed their child, who raped him? When they see you, they see Jesus, and they want to be like you because really they want to be like Jesus. That's a real life example of putting this gospel into practice. Let me know your thoughts. What great stories have you heard of people who have loved their enemies in ways that make our minds want to explode? That's great love. Maximilian Kolbe, so many others. I want to love like that. With God's grace, hopefully I can. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. Thanks for watching this Bacon Bit. And as always, remember to live your life sunny side up.